Genesis 38 should be. And it came to pass, when Judah went down from his brethren, and turned into a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira. Get the right button here. There. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua, and he took her and went in unto her. Now, you're probably going to marry somebody that you know, and you're probably going to know people that you meet, and you're probably going to meet people depending on where you go. I told you about a guy I met, I think how many times he'd been divorced, 10, 12, 14 times, and I said, where are you picking these women up at? He said, the bar. I said, you're fishing in the wrong fishing hole, man. You're always going to get a carp in that fishing hole. Why don't you get one at church instead? Still may have trouble, but it can be less of it, I think. So Judah saw there, and he married this Canaanite. And she conceived and bare a son, and called his name She conceived again and bare a son, and called his name Onan. And she conceived again and bare a son, and called his name Shelah. So Judah has 3 boys by this woman. And she was at Chazib when she bare him. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn. So the boys finally got old enough to get married, and her name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. It does not say what he did, but God killed him. For whatever he did, he was wicked. And Judah said to Onan, go in unto thy brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. This was the custom God commanded. If a man dies with no children, the brother has to marry that same woman, and the first baby gets the inheritance of the dead brother. That's why they kept the property straight and the inheritance straight in that land. That's just the custom they did. Okay. And in Matthew 22, Jesus refers to this story when the Sadducees that say there is no resurrection. So they thought when you die, you die. So they're sad, you see. It came to pass the Sadducees, which say there is no resurrection, asked him, saying, Master, if a man die having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up seed to his brother. Now there were with us 7 brethren. Of course, they're making up a story. And the first, when he had married a wife, deceased. First guy died. And they go through the second guy and the third guy, all 7. And the woman died also. Therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be of the 7? For they all had her. And you can read the rest of the story in Matthew 22 and see Jesus' classic answer to those guys and their typical scoffer-type questions. But that, whose wife shall she be in the judgment, is prompted me to go back to find the story of the ordination of Rasmus Jones. Love this story. Let's figure out here. The ordination committee said, Brother Jones, what's your favorite book of the Bible? He said, the book of the parables. They said, and what is your favorite parable? He said, the parable of the Good Samaritan. They said, would you please tell us that parable so we can test your Bible knowledge to see if you be qualified to be ordained? And so Rasmus Jones said, well, gentlemen, once there was a man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among thorns. And the thorns sprung up and choked him, and as he was going on, he didn't have any money. And so he met the queen of Sheba, and told her, silver and gold have I none. So she gave him 1,000 talents of gold and 100 changes of raiment. Then he got into a chariot and drove furiously. And when he was driving under a big juniper tree, his hair got caught in a limb of that tree. And he hung there many days. The ravens brought him food to eat and water to drink, and he ate 5,000 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. One night, while he was hanging there asleep, his wife Delilah came along and cut off his hair. And he dropped and fell on the stony ground. But he got up and continued on. Soon it began to rain. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. And the water rose so high that a great fish swallowed him. But it threw him up 3 days later. Being confused by all these events, he hid himself in a cave and lived on locusts and wild honey. When the rain stopped, he went on until he met a servant who said, come take supper at my house. But the man made excuses and said, no, I won't. I have married a wife, and therefore I can't go. But the servant went out into the highways and hedges and compelled him to come in. After supper, he went on his way and finally came down into Jericho. And he got there, he looked up and saw that old Queen Jezebel sitting way up high in a window. She laughed at him. The man became furious and said, throw her down from there, boys. So they threw her down. Then he said, throw her down again. And they threw her down again, 70 times 7. And of the pieces that remained, they picked up 12 baskets full, besides women and children. Then the man said, blessed are the peacemakers. Now, whose wife will she be on Judgment Day? Chairman of the ordination committee said, brother, this man knows his Bible. I recommend he be ordained right away. All in favor say aye. Ordination of Rasmus Jones. Anyway, they're supposed to go back and marry if brother dies, the next brother has to marry the one to produce an heir. And Judah, chapter 38 again, verse 8. Judah said unto his Onan, go into thy brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. But Onan knew that the seed should not be his, and it came to pass, when he went in to his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground. He didn't want to produce a child because he's got to raise the baby and feed it and take care of it, but he's not going to get anything out of it. So this was a duty of the brother, lest he should give his seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. So now both of Judah's boys are dead. Then said Judah to Tamar his daughter-in-law, remain a widow at thy father's house till Shelah my son be grown. For he said, lest peradventure he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. And in process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. And Judah was comforted, and went up into the sheep shearers to Timnath, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, behold, thy father-in-law goeth to Timnath to shear sheep. And she put off her widow's garments from off her, and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnath, for she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him. When Judah saw her, he thought her to be an harlot, because she had covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way, and said, go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee, for he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what wilt thou give me, that thou mayest come in unto me? And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. And she said, wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? And he said, what pledge shall I give thee? And she said, thy signet, thy bracelets, thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it to her, and came in unto her, and she conceived by him. And she arose, and went away, and laid by her veil from her, and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend the Adullamite to receive the pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. And he asked the men of the place, saying, where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, there was no harlot in this place. And he returned to Judah, and said, I cannot find her. Also the men of the place said, there was no harlot in this place. And Judah said, let her take it to her, lest we be ashamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her. And it came to pass 3 months later, it was told Judah, saying, Tamar thy daughter-in-law hath played the harlot. And also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, bring her forth, and let her be burnt. The hypocrisy is incredible here. It's okay for the man to commit adultery, but not for the woman. She should be stoned to death. I mean, it's just double-minded at the very least. Okay. And when she was brought forth, she sent to her husband, to her father-in-law, saying, by the man whose these are, am I with child? And she said, discern, I pray thee, whose are these, the signet and bracelets and staff? And Judah acknowledged them, and said, she hath been more righteous than I, because I gave her not to Shelah my wife, to my son. And he knew her again no more. And it came to pass in the time of her travail, that behold, twins were in her womb. And it came to pass when she travailed, that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, this came out first. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out. And she said, how hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez. Afterward came out his brother that had the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. So here we have 2 illegitimate children, bastard children, by Judah with his own daughter-in-law. Now, in Deuteronomy, God had said, one of the laws that God gave to Moses, Deuteronomy 23:2, a bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord even to his 10th generation. Shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord? I think that means they can't become a citizen for 10 generations. So if you have a bastard child, you got to wait 10 generations to get in to be a citizen, voting rights or whatever else, okay? Now, in the book of Ruth, at the end of the book of Ruth, there's a very strange ending to the book. I puzzled on it for years. I read my Bible many, many times. You read the book of Ruth, it's a beautiful love story, and it tells how Ruth falls in love with Boaz, and they get married and have a baby and name him Obed, and Obed gets Jesse, and Jesse begets David the king. And then it says, verse 18, now these are the generations of Pharez. I did not put 2 and 2 together for a long time. Why on earth would you start a genealogy with Pharez? Well, he's the bastard son of Judah. And God had told Judah that the Messiah is going to come through your line, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. But Judah messed up. He's now produced a bastard child. He's scrambled up the inheritance. Got to wait 10 generations to come back in. Pharez, the bastard child, there's one, begat Hezron, and Hezron begat Ram, and Ram begat Aminadab, and Aminadab begat Nahshon, and Nahshon begat Salmon. Salmon begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. David is the 10th generation. Now the people said, we want a king. They told Samuel, your boys are not doing like you should. Your boys are not doing right. Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. We want to be like everybody else. That's always a dangerous thing. When your kids come home from school, hey, Dad, I want to do this. I want to pierce my ears or pierce my belly button or whatever everybody else is doing. I want to get a tattoo. Everybody else is doing it. It doesn't matter. This attitude you got to watch out for. Figure what most of the people are doing is probably not the way to do it. We want to be like all the other nations. And the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king. But he did. Anybody know who they got for the first king? Saul. He was a dud. Started off good, ended up really bad. Had they waited a little bit longer, they would have got, who was next king? David. David was the 10th generation. God wanted them to have a king, and he was getting one ready for him. And David was a really, really good guy in almost every area. Messed up bad a couple times, but he was a great king. Wrote half the book of Psalms. So the lesson here from Genesis chapter 38, sorry about that, got the wrong number, is just wait for God's best. That can be in anything. That can be in a job. That can be in a partner. That can be in a ministry. You wait till God's not in any hurry at all. We're the ones who keep getting in a hurry. God's not in a hurry. He's not the least bit nervous. He knows everything coming. He knows what's coming in the future. He's already been there. He's already in the future. He's not in time at all. We're stuck in time. And we're headed for some pretty bad times on planet Earth. What was the shooting today? Was it shooting or?
Driving into bicyclists.
Driving in New York, drove into a bunch of bicyclists, hollering, Allah Akbar, God is great. Their God, anyway. Allah is not the God of the Bible, that's for sure.
Not at all.
Not at all. Get the book from our ministry called The Prophet, if you want to see more on that, the history of Islam and how it got going and all that stuff. Anyway, lesson was, wait for God's best. Judah messed up royally, and God blessed anyway. If you have scrambled up your life and done some really dumb things, listen carefully, it's not over. God can still use you. He'll find something for you to do in the family of God. You cannot mess it up bad enough that God can't get some good out of it. It's amazing. Who was that piano player you're telling me about? What's his name?
Anthony Berger.
Anthony?
Anthony Berger.
Anthony Berger, 18 months old, fell on a hot grill.
8 months old.
8 months old.
Fell on a hot stove.
Hot stove, burned all of his fingers down to the bone, and ended up being one of the world's greatest pianists and played for, what group was that we listened to?
Kingsman.
Kingsman, piano player. Have you heard him play? Blow your mind. He got world's best pianist, gospel pianist, 10 years in a row.
And now they named it after him.
And they named it after him,
Yeah.
okay.
He died of a heart attack on that voyage to Alaska with the singing groups with Dobson.
Died of a heart attack at age 40-something, playing the piano. Just keeled over dead.
Just killed over dead.
Wow.
God took him just like that.
You can mess up really, really bad and say, God, I'm sorry. Would you please do something with me? He'll say, okay. My dad, when we were little, we used to put puzzles together all the time. My dad was an engineer, and I didn't realize at the time he's trying to get us to think mathematically, what goes where, and taught us math before we could read, But if you broke something, if you broke a toy, broke your bicycle, broke anything, Dad would fix it. But the rule was very simple. You have to bring me all the pieces. You give me all the pieces, I'll fix it. God's got the same rule. You messed up your life? Give him all the pieces. He'll fix it.